here we're going to start in your peristernal long axis. You're going to increase your depth first. As long as you've kind of got your descending aorta here, you know you've got to increase your depth because what we're looking for is either pleural effusion, which is fluid in the lungs, or pericardial effusion. So here you're going to do your clip store. I may save time, I'm going to do that. And then once you do your clip store at your increased depth, you're going to bring it back in. You want to keep your descending aorta here in the picture. You just want to make sure you're not going to increase it too much. If I cannot see descending aorta, to me this is a zoomed in image. So you want to make sure you keep your descending aorta included in your standard depth or field of depth of your peristernal long. So you will also take a clip store here. Then you're going to zoom in on your aortic and mitral valve. You're going to clip store here. Now I know your protocol is a little different. As long as you include all the parts, to me here, what I would do next, since I've already had it zoomed, I would go ahead and put my color on. This will also be a clip store. If you feel like you can get both valves with color, that's fine, take it. If you feel like you need to focus more on aortic insufficiency, which nobody has here, you can take two separate images. As long as you have color included on both of your valves and clip store, you should be good. That's what you want. And then here, so now we're going to start measuring your interventricular septal wall, your EF. So I'm going to get a good image here, standard depth here, and I'm going to scroll through to end diastole, so you can see where my marker is, very end of at the end of the QRS here, and you can also see as I'm scrolling through. So the aortic valve, you can watch it here, it's trying to open. So I know I've gone too far, that starts systole, so I'm just going to come back a little bit. So this would be my end diastole measurements. You must put this in a CALCS package. So we're going to start here at the interventricular septal wall. I feel like you should measure closer towards the base of the heart. You're just going to make sure you're not too far, like mid-ventricle. So here I've measured interventricular septal wall. Now we're measuring the left ventricle and end diastole, and then we're going to measure the posterior wall. So that would be an image store. Also, you can measure your aortic root. If you want to do everything separately, that is fine, whatever you're comfortable with. But you can go ahead and measure your aortic root in this view, if I can find it. Because I can see hers fairly well. That's fine. So we can P1 that. So now, let me come over here. I'm going to scroll through to get my systole measurements, which will be here. And remember, when you do systole, all you need is your left ventricle in systole. You do not need interventricular septal wall. You do not need posterior wall. Even if you include that, that's fine, but you're just doing extra work. So here, the EF is 65. That's normal. You can, if you want to go ahead and measure your left atrium in this view. If I can find it. There you are. So that would be an image here.
Point out the pericardium to them.
The bright light?
Yes.
Right here. Oh, I thought I put it on point.
Some of you guys were including that bright echogenic part in your posterior wall measurement. That's the pericardium. That's not the actual heart muscle, so do not include it when you measure.
So, for example, if we're going back and just measuring posterior wall, you're not going to measure it like this. You're going to more of that hypoechoic area. Once you hit that bright white line, you've gone too far. So we also have to measure our LVOT. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to say that. I recommend having it zoomed. So while you actually have your image zoomed, when you do your aortic and mitral valve, you very well can go in and do your LVOT. You're gonna find, once you start to scan every day in clinic, the routine that you like. As long as it's all included, it's fine. So here you're gonna measure LVOT. You can tell that the aortic valve is open. Let me see where I can find it. have to hunt this one down. Oh, here it is. Your LVOT diameter here. Well, can I see that? There we go. So 2.1, that's totally normal. If you were measuring and getting like 1.5, try to go back and remeasure. You may be underestimating it. So you just make sure you have your aortic valve, your LVOT, all that opening well. Because if you're measuring it and getting it too small, which is going to be hard to underestimate yours because you can see it so well, you should be close to 2. 1.92, that's pretty common, but if you're getting like 1.4, 1.5, you need to go back and try to remeasure it. Here we're also going to do M mode through each of the aortic, mitral, and the left ventricle. So you can see here, these this is the right non-coronary cusp and the non-coronary cusp of the aortic valve. So this is during systole. You kind of just watch the motion of the heart. This is when during diastole, when the valve is closed. A lot of folks like to look at this, the aortic cusp separation. So you're going to do M mode there. You're going to slide it on over through the mitral valve. You can kind of see your E and your A points here of your mitral valve. So this is part of the right ventricle. This is the interventricular septal wall. This is in diastole, so this is when your mitral valve is open. So this is during systole when your mitral valve is closed. Looks very similar to when you do your pulse wave in your 4-chamber. Then you're also going to take an image here of your left ventricle. So you can freeze here. You would store this image. I don't know if a lot of places still do this, but when I started doing echo, you actually used to measure ejection fraction in M mode. So you think right ventricle, that's kind of like your dark anechoic area, your interventricular septal wall during diastole and systole, left ventricle, and then also this is your posterior wall here in diastole and systole. So you can kind of see where you could essentially measure it like we would in 2D. Here you'll also pick up like cord or parts of the mitral valve. Then also you can see the pericardium there. So you're going to take 3 still images of the mitral, aortic, and your left ventricle. So we've technically already done the color of the mitral valve. If you decided you wanted to do that towards how you follow your protocol, that's fine. I am missing color of the interventricular septal wall. This is very important. If you have a patient that has a VSD or ventral septal defect, which is a hole across the interventricular septal wall, you want to see if there's any shunting across. So you're going to take an image here of your interventricular septal wall that's going to focus that color across that wall. But if you're taking your image here and you're going to say that that's part of the interventricular septal wall, well, my color's not on that at all. So you got to make sure that it's that color box is moved where your focus is.
And don't put one big color box across the whole heart. If you start forgetting stuff, if I see a color box across the whole heart, I'm like, they don't know what they did.
Yeah, because you don't know where you're focusing. Even this, sometimes when you have this, you know, what am I looking? I don't, you know, I think I had a couple of these like that. Just be very mindful of the shape of your box. You want it to know where your focus is. You don't want it too big. You don't want it too wide. I don't want to see this for sure. This is not going to include aortic and interventricular septal wall. That's not going to work because you can kind of tell it takes away of what you're looking at. Kind of slows your color, like your frame rate's down.
So I'm sure every machine you can adjust the color box around the trackball. If you look on the bottom of the screen up there, it says like
kind of see it right there.
You can
somewhere.
see it'll say on there size, color box, whatever. It'll see it says RO size.
Oh no, anyways, I'm over here playing. I'm messing up. Okay.
Is it okay to get the mitral valve and the aortic valve in the same color box?
To me, and I don't know how Ms. Flack feels about this. This is how I do it normally. If you have it zoomed in, I would feel like that's okay. Do you feel like that's okay, or do you want them to do it separate?
No, it's okay.
Okay. But I don't know, it's kind of a fine line here. You just want to make sure that you're not doing this because that's still too much. If you have your image zoomed in, then we're going to know where your color box is focusing on the 2 heart valves. But if you have a hard time getting them both in the same picture, you can do them separately, that's fine. So if I wanted to take this for both of my aortic and mitral, and then you can move your color box, well, I would recommend sending that out. Up here on the interventricular septal wall. Because See, I'm not even focusing on aortic at all. You can just tell where my focus is now versus where it was over the heart valves. So I think we've covered all that. So now we're gonna do your RVIT, your right ventricular inflow. So here from peristernal, you know what we're missing on here? And we'll have to look to see if it's on the grade sheet. Does anybody know what we're missing? We're missing the ascending aorta. Now, it may not be a part of the protocol, but just know how to get to it, know how to measure it. We've gone over this, we've looked at it. If I cannot see her ascending aorta well in her peristernal long, which is fine, that's very common, I'm just gonna slide my transducer, slide the probe up. And now you can see a little bit more of the ascending aorta. Just know where to find that. A lot of your clinical sites are gonna have that regardless if it's part of your protocol. And you would measure it here. Of course, it would go in a package. And really, even if you wanted to do your root in the same, just as long as you include it, you could actually do that. Just remember about your ascending, because a lot of facilities are gonna look at that. So I'm gonna come back to my peristernal. So I'm gonna angle the probe down. So I'm gonna send the sound waves back down. I always think as if I'm angling back towards her hip, her right hip. So the cord's actually gonna come towards her left shoulder. So I'm just angling down. So from peristernal, I'm gonna slowly angle down. And this is the RVIT. So right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle. You're gonna take a clip store here, then you're gonna show color. You're gonna clip store here, and then you're gonna do continuous wave. Because what are we looking for here in continuous wave? Anybody know this? What are we I'm looking at it, I know I am. What are we looking for here if we do continuous wave? Does anybody have an idea what we might measure if she had it? Yes. Which I don't see any in this view. That's not to say that it does not exist. Sometimes you will see it only in one view. That's why we do it 3 different times essentially. So since there is no tricuspid regurg to measure, we would just clip store. If she were to have regurg, it would be during systole. It would be somewhere in this area. This is the valve closure. So you see a little E and A, that's diastole, so that's tricuspid valve opening. Here the valve is closed. So this is during systole. Usually you would have a rounded jet here with tricuspid regurg. If she were to have it, then you would measure it. And that would be under your, I should say like TR, Vmax, I believe, somewhere. I don't know why it's pulling up too big.
For your practical, if somebody has a little bit of regurgitation going on at any of their valves, if it's barely there, I'm not worried about it. Now, if somebody, which I didn't see anyone that had bad anything when I was grading, if it's really bad and you don't measure it, then I'm gonna question you about it, because I think one of the last things on the last page of the practical grade sheet is noted any regurgitation. So somebody in here had some mitral regurgitation. I'll find who it was. Who? You? Okay.
So then, so remember we angled down for RVIT, and so it's gonna be a lot. I know it's a lot to kind of go through the protocol, but just be mindful of your depth with each step that you're moving, because you're gonna make sure that you're not gonna, I had a few of these, the RVIT clip store that you took. This was a lot of what I was seeing.
Yes.
So yes, that's a great, you're in the right window, you're taking what you need to, but you've got to make sure you increase your depth, because honestly a lot of what I was looking at, the focus was down here and then the depth. So you want me to look here. So that's instantly what my eyes do. So just be mindful of where your depth is, where your focus is at, because that's going to let your cardiologist know what you mean, what you're trying to show them, because it's just, our focus here is going to be, right side of the heart. So then we're going to come back. What I recommend is if you have a hard time transitioning from RVIT to RVOT in a peristernal long, always go back to your peristernal long window. You angle down for RVIT. I'm going to come back to peristernal long. Then I'm going to angle up. So I'm going to send the sound waves up, I think, towards her left shoulder. So the cord's gonna come down more towards her right hip. And I'm gonna see if I can find it. A lot of times you're gonna have to increase your gain. This is a tricky window to get. To me, this is one of the harder to see the pulmonic valves in. Let's see here, you can see it here, let's see. I wanna zoom, okay. So here is the pulmonic valve, pulmonary artery here. You can't quite see bifurcation, some of you will be able to. But this would be sufficient for an RVOT clip store here in Parashon Long. Actually, you might can see both here if you think about it. So you would clip store here, you're gonna put color on. She's got a little pulmonic insufficiency. You can clearly tell it's gonna be mild or just very minimal, but looking at this, I know that when I put continuous wave through that valve, that I should be able to see a little bit of pulmonic insufficiency. So you're gonna see the pulmonic insufficiency during diastole. So here, pulmonic valve is opening, sending blood flow away from you, going towards the lungs. So this is during systole, the pulmonic valve is open. So here the pulmonic valve closes. This is during diastole. If you have a significant pulmonic insufficiency jet, you will be able to see a slope, but I would say like 90% of the time, so more likely than not, you're just gonna get this in diastole. So think of where you are at your QRS. You're at in diastole. So you have an option when you measure for your PI. I'm looking at it. Am I looking at it?
Maybe it's under PR, yeah.
You know what I'm looking for. Oh, wait. Oh, the very last one. So some of them will say PI in velocity or PR. Even if you cannot find it, put a caliper there, because if you can see it, you know you should be able to Doppler it. So this, she has very minimal trace pulmonic insufficiency. So of course we would store that. That's what we're looking for, mainly when you do that Doppler. Let me make sure. This you also are gonna do pulse wave. So I've done continuous wave, I'm gonna put pulse wave, I'm gonna put it right above the valve here, and we're gonna pulse wave it. So very similar to when you think you're Doppling 5-chamber, your LVOT, think about how your pulse wave, the difference between how your pulse wave looks and your continuous wave. This looks very similar. So you're gonna do a pulse wave of your RVOT, and this can we measure? In your protocol, it tells you to do this acceleration time. If I don't know how you feel about this. To me, I would say don't sweat this too much. But in your protocol, it does say to measure your acceleration time. You're pretty much going to start at the baseline here. This one doesn't have a crosshair. I don't know how you feel about it. To me, I do take this image even if I don't measure anything.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so in your protocol it does say that, but as long as you know where to put your cursor to pulse wave, what it's gonna look like, I take this image in case, especially towards the very end, I've done my entire echo, and what if I get to subcostal and I put color over the interventricular septal wall and I think I see a VSD. Well, I already have this is probably future. I need this picture. I will have to measure something off of this picture for that VSD. So a lot of time where I'm at, I take this image even if I don't measure anything. That way if I need to go back. In your protocol, a lot of your clinic sites, they will do essentially the pulmonic, the acceleration time. But generally that's what it'll look like. And we would just store that. But as long as you know where to put your cursor. So pulse wave here,